Hiya there. As is part of my divine purpose, is to respond to the world around me. And today I have been very inspired to respond to a conversation on Blue Abroad that I have watched twice now about well-being in AFL. So my opinions on well-being in sport is that it is much more than mental health. And so Pom and Terry both touched on this and some other really incredible points. And if you have not watched it, please go and watch it. Even if you are not a supporter of AFL and you do not understand anything about it, the issues that they talk about are very important issues, and I think give a really good overview of ways of thinking that we really should be moving into. And so I just wanted to add my voice to this conversation. Like I said, am a firm believer that the overall term mental health is not deep enough to be the complete category. I am an emotional and spiritual health advisor, and so this is a category that I find absolutely necessary to be able to take care of the overall well-being of a human. So emotional and spiritual health, it might be a category that you can put under the banner of mental health, but it's certainly not the same thing. So emotional and spiritual health works, I think, on a much deeper introspection level. I feel like once you get to mental health, we're so overrun with people actually needing medical treatment and medication and psychiatrists, that I think emotional and spiritual components of mental health often get overpassed because there's just not the time and there's just not the facilities to be able to look into it. So emotional and spiritual health, it provides things like superior emotional and social functioning. It looks at mood resilience to acute stresses. It looks at being aware of your emotions, having self-awareness, and looking at your ability to be able to self-reflect. So particularly for me, the way that I look at this is emotional and spiritual health is the understanding of the default programming of someone's emotional and spiritual state. And it involves looking at an individual's birth chart mapping and analyzing that in relation to categorizing parts of the human psyche that you can then look at for deep self-reflection and self-awareness. Now, I believe the ancient wisdom that you can find in a birth chart provides just the perfect list of places that we can look at ourselves for the purpose of exploring the depths of ourself for inner healing and understanding. And it's through subconscious exploration that we are able to uncover and break down so many barriers and emotional and reaction programming, and also where our places of repressed emotions. So uncovering these parts of us really gives us the ability to see behaviors that we might project into other relationships. We can see things where, we might fight our own internal ego battles of survival, and how this is then projected out into society, or, places where we might struggle to say no. From a birth chart analysis, we can also learn our tendencies towards self-sabotage and negative criticism of ourselves and others. We can learn the ways in which we will project these repressed emotions and unexplored programs. And these things are at the core of all types of intolerance, all types of prejudice, as well as how we are outwardly aggressive and how we present masculine energy and feminine energy through toxic behaviors, as well as it really can show us the places where we might struggle to create boundaries and the reasoning behind that. So with that being said, I wanted to take you through a look into some of the placements on the birth chart that I have been able to create. If you've watched me before, you know that I need a few more details, time of birth and stuff, to be able to get completely accurate information, but you can get somewhat accurate information just from the birth date. So I just want to use this as an example of where this ancient wisdom, where birth chart analysis and astrological counseling can be very helpful when we are looking at situations like this. So on this birth chart, there is a Mars in Gemini. So this is someone who, so Mars being the masculine energy in the way that we take action. And this placement really gives a desire for excitement. And, the result of not getting that excitement is a restlessness. Okay, this is someone who has a Taurus, Sun, Mercury, and Venus placement, which is like a need to build solid relationships, a need to be down to earth, and self-worth and, how you make an income is very much related to each other, as well as there's a craving for luxury, as well as, it tends to be more of an introverted personality. There is the Uranus and Neptune in Aquarius, which really does play a huge part here because this is sort of the revolution of our personal rule system. And this energy is quite rebellious when placed here, Uranus and Aquarius. So Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, so it makes that rebellious energy quite loud and can be quite activated. So that creates this superpowered shake things up energy. Neptune is the dreaming energy, so this is the space that we are allowed to imagine how to break the rules, and Uranus is the energy of breaking the rules, okay? So then, the darker shadow placements in a birth chart, Lilith in Pisces. So this is a very getting lost in escapist behavior placement. This is when we find people who get lost in that because reality can never be as good as the delusion that they can create, the imagination space that they can create. And we see here also a Chiron placement in Capricorn. So this is a core wound in responsibility, achievement, and success. And it often shows somebody who was judged for not being successful or good enough. And it can create a feeling of obsession with success while at the same time a feeling of not being good enough or not being adequate. So rolling all of that together as someone who analyzes birth charts, this is a person who needs solid relationships, needs to be able to ground into comfort, and needs to be able to feel worth, both on an emotional level and also on a material and financial level. So Taurus energy is second house energy, and that represents also how we make money. So it is the energy of craving luxury. So this introverted energy mixed with this Mars placement in Gemini, it gives this desire for excitement. And without that, it's going to be met with a restless energy. So then Uranus and Neptune placements in Aquarius add to this need for adventure, add to this need for excitement. So Aquarius energy is that energy that can turn off emotions, and it's somewhat proud to be able to do that. And these particular placements in Aquarius are very important to note because Neptune, the dreamer energy, the place where we can imagine how to break the rules, and Uranus, the energy of breaking the rules and being able to jump into sudden change and being able to come up with revolutionary on the spot lightning ideas, and being, that Aquarius and Uranus are working together, it really superpowers that ability to be able to be rebellious. Okay, and then as always, looking at the shadow placements in a chart can be very confronting, but also can be very helpful. So I'll start with Chiron. So Chiron is the placement in our birth chart that represents wounds we need to heal. And these are wounds that we received between the ages of 3 and 23 that happened in our material world. And Lilith placements, Black Moon Lilith, is a representative of the dark repressed side of our emotions. Our deepest desires, places we may have felt guilt or shame or been misunderstood. So looking at this chart, the Chiron here is in Capricorn, which is a core wound in responsibility, achievement, and success. And what that means is, this is someone who, even though they are trying to achieve these things, because our Chiron wound is sort of a long-term thing that we work with, it's also the wounds that we can heal about ourselves that then become one of our superpowers. And so someone who isn't feeling good enough, someone who doesn't feel like they're ever going to achieve success or not ever be adequate, is still someone who will be trying for those things, trying to get as high up as they can, trying to achieve their goals. And Capricorn energy is very disciplined about it, okay? So they might be internally judging themselves and internally not feeling good enough, but at the same time, they will be someone who is very disciplined at trying to achieve their goals. So then the really interesting placement in this chart, and it's one that I share, so I do know from firsthand experience quite a lot about this placement, but a Lilith in Pisces. So this is the placement where we can really understand someone's tendencies towards escapist behaviors. So people with this placement are often prone to anxiety and crippling fears. And it can manifest in ways also of not being aware of your own negative emotions. And that makes this craving for escapist behavior quite a common issue with a Lilith in Pisces placement. And so this can be using addictions as coping mechanisms. So all types of addictions, okay? Alcohol, drugs, sex, overly daydreaming, wanting to fix other people, these sorts of addictive behaviors that humans get, okay? So this Lilith in Pisces placement, it also makes you very receptive to influences around you more than other placements. And it can give you a really hard time setting boundaries and saying no, which often leads to putting trust in the wrong people. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and this is the realm of the fantastical. And it's the realm of delusion and illusion. And Pisces in a Lilith is someone who can very effectively create and slip into a delusion. And reality often becomes quite a disappointment because you can't compare, okay? Your dreamland and the illusions you have for yourself will never compare to the reality. You think about, in my dreams I can fly, but in reality I can't, okay? So it's that sort of a feeling. So when you put all of this together in relation to a human, we see someone whose self-worth is caught up both in stable relationships and in material luxury. We see someone who is introverted yet needs adventure. So when triggered to restlessness, can very easily bring rebellion to their values and rule structure by completely disconnecting from their emotional state, or by comfortably slipping into escapism to relieve the boredom of reality, or to break free from the crippling fears and anxieties that have been created from trying to heal the wound of never feeling successful. So someone who also, when they're in this state of really needing someone to have their back, really needing someone to be able to stand up next to them and help talk them through it, this is also someone who has a very high chance of being surrounded by people that they cannot entirely trust with their well-being. And then when in the thralls of this adventure that they've been craving so much, they'll also find it really hard to say no. So just that overall chart and the situation that's going on right now, to me, is just very interesting because these are things that we can see in a birth chart map of somebody. And when you analyze the overall, that's not even a full analyst, look at it, there's other ways that you can look at a birth chart that can go much deeper than that. So there were other points brought up in this very important conversation between these two very important voices on this issue. And I just want to touch on a couple more. Terry talks about going to court as being a crossroads, and that it will give an opportunity for Elijah to really ask himself what is important, and mentions that sometimes, our surroundings are not what is best for us. And then Pom talks about how this is an issue for society to fix and not an issue for the government to fix. And I just want to touch on that from an astrological point of view, because it could not be more energetically on point with what is happening in the universal energy world right now, okay? We are in a stage of transition between ages, between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. And so one of the steps of that we are currently deeply inside of, and that is Pluto, moving from Capricorn to Aquarius. So that Capricorn energy of discipline is really asking us to take a look at our subconscious fears and our shadow through a mature big daddy energy that wants us to learn the emotional lessons we need to understand ourselves on a deep level. And so Pluto has been moving in and out of retrograde and forward motion. It just a couple of weeks ago moved direct, meaning like that's putting Pluto back in charge. So we have been given this opportunity while Pluto was in retrograde to self-analyze, to make changes to self. And now with Pluto going direct, we're going to start seeing lightning changes happen or events happen that feel out of our control. With this eclipse energy that we are currently dealing with, we are 6 days away from a closing eclipse. And we are starting to see these huge changes, these huge issues coming up that are starting conversations that are going to transform over the next 5 years of our existence. The voice vote that we just had is one of those. Okay, that the fact that that came up no is going to be a changeable moment over the next 5 years. We're going to see massive change on that level. And so, you know, looking at this idea of being at a crossroads, yes, every single one of us is at a crossroads. And this is a crossroads that we have not seen. Nobody walking their feet on this earth, none of the bodies have seen. This is a transition energetically that has not happened for about 250 years. And this is the first time since then that we have been able to be standing at this crossroads. And this is generational programming, generational curse breaking crossroads energy. And the way that Terry brought it up is on point. We are being asked what is in the best interest of myself, what is in the best interest on aligning myself with my most fulfilling soul purpose. And does that mean I have to say no and goodbye and clear out things that are no longer serving who I am? And the answer to that is yes. And energetically, from an astrological perspective, we are being supported to do that. So this moment that has happened with Elijah is exactly what Terry says. It is exactly his crossroads situation. And right now, the eclipse cycle that we are closing down is on the Scorpio-Taurus axis, Scorpio being deep change, deep subconscious level change about our fears, our addictions, our desires. Taurus being our comfort, being our home feelings, being our how we make money. So these two things are being completely transformed, and that started in November 2021. And that is closing this weekend on the 29th when we have the closing eclipse in Taurus. So this is a high energy week. We are in a high energy window of transformative change, and conversations like the one that Terry and Pom had will be influential over the next 5 years of transforming how people see themselves and see the collective. The other thing that is happening right now is we have Saturn in Pisces, and this is allowing this kind of fuzzy energy between a rule structure and delusion. And it's where we're starting to see these sorts of behaviors of these young men and women going into the illusion, then coming back out of it and experiencing both sides of it in relation to how they want to build their value systems. And it's also allowing the collective space to imagine a world that could be different. And so to look at this crossroads situation and to look at what Pom said about it being, you know, it's society's job to fix, energetically on point. And that is what we are being asked to do here. We are being asked to understand ourselves on a deep enough level that we can look at somebody else and understand them. We don't need to know the ins and outs of their existence, but we can understand the layers of who they are as people and where they have come from. And I think it's important to take away from this issue of humanity being one. And this idea that we can hold somebody up as, you know, there's this 21-year-old over here who, like Pom says, can't do anything without being flashed up on social media. And then there's this 21-year-old over here who goes about his business and nobody stops him. In actual fact, these are the same people. They have the same internal thoughts, the same internal divine spark. They just have different experiences in the world. But when it comes down to it, they're two 21-year-old young men doing their best to figure out who they are, just like the rest of us. Just one of them has so much pressure on needing to be held up as an example of perfection to society, which as it's said in their video, is just an insane concept of needing to hold somebody up as perfection, because nobody is. And so, you know, we may all come from different privileges, from different oppressions. We're all built on our own traumas and our own emotional reactions. But in the end, we're all just walking flesh prisons, storing a spark of the divine spirit that wants us to feel, wants us to grow, and wants us to evolve to a point of understanding. And it is the understanding and acceptance of who we are in our authentic souls, aside from all of the filters that society has built on us, all of the rule structures that we have been given by external places. And it's from a place of true self-love that we are able to understand and empathize with others. As I've said about my whole rabbit hole into the AFL, Carlton are an example here. The way that the culture of the supporters, the culture of the whole team has shifted is so visible, is so energetically felt by people paying attention. And it is an important piece of this transition into the age of more collective awareness, into the age of Aquarius. And these sorts of conversations are vital to be had, particularly by people in their masculine energy. And this is the primary example. And I think even though it has come from a somewhat negative situation, it will be a positive. The way that it seems that the culture has shifted, like Terry says, to not just throw him out as somebody who's a failure, but to pull him in as somebody that we need to accept and help not only forgive himself, but forgive on a level of understanding that humans make mistakes, and that's how we grow and learn. And, you know, mistakes and traumas are just the gateway to transmuting that into gold, to transmuting that into power, and to be able to be the example that we needed as a kid to understand that not everybody's perfect. So don't ever be afraid to go into your shadows, to look at your traumas, to face the person in the mirror, to stand and take accountability for your mistakes, for the places that you let yourself down, for the places that you let other people down. Never be afraid of that. And I really hope that that's what this situation turns out to be, is a step in the direction of understanding that about ourselves. If you want a birth chart analysis or an astrological counseling session, come and find me. My details are everywhere here. And thank you again for Terry for having Blue Abroad. And thank you to Pom. As always, you know, I think your brain is an absolutely stunning piece of technology. And together, the two of you, the way that you communicate is stunning. And as I've said to both of you, is vital, is important, and will play a huger part than I think you both know in the transformation of a lot of people's thoughts. And so until you see my face again, you know I'm going to say it, stay weird.